All right, now let's talk about wrapper functions. So for a wrapper function, we'll start with range sum. Again, here's our range sum example. I'm going to put it here. And sure enough, the range sum from 10 to 15 is 75 because 10 plus 11 plus 12 plus 13 plus 14 plus 15 is 75. Great. We're going to look at a different way to solve this problem. The first way that we've done it here, I would consider this to be the most natural way to solve it. I would prefer you solve it this way, but we're going to show you another way to think about this. Okay? So this way we're going to say is, what if we actually passed in the sum that we've seen so far? Okay? So that we're going to call it sum so far. And when we first call, that sum is 0. Okay? And then when we recursively call, instead of adding in the low, we'll add the low into the sum so far. Okay? And then when we're done, that sum so far will actually hold our result. So first, let's watch that it actually works, which it does. Let's make sure we understand why it works. Low, high, sum so far. So when we call it, the sum from 10 to 15, the sum so far is 0. We haven't started. On the recursive call from 11 to 15, the sum so far includes that 10. Then when we recursively call from 12 to 15, now it's 10 plus 11. And then it's 10 plus 11 plus 12, and so on, until finally it's 10 plus 11 plus 12 out to 15. If you're not following this, I would suggest using the visualize button to see this more, and also talking to a TA. But this is another way to do recursion. I kind of like the other way more, the first way, but this works. Great. Now the problem here is we just solved this by adding another parameter, sum so far, which you're not allowed to do. You can't just add another parameter. So what we could do instead, because when we call it, by the way, we have to still call low to high. Range sum goes from low to high. Range sum does not include sum so far. So what we need is a way to have range sum still go just from low to high, and yet to be able to use this function. So let's call this function our range sum helper, okay? And we'll simply return our range sum helper from low to high, where the initial sum so far is 0. And then when this recurses, it recurses into itself. So add helper here, helper, okay? And we run this, sure enough, it still works. And if we get rid of this print, there it is, it still works. So what we did was we created this very thin wrapper, this function, which is the function we're calling, which is not recursive. Range sum here is not recursive. It's a wrapper around this other function we created that is recursive. And the reason we did this is so that we can add another parameter that we needed for the way in which we were solving this problem. So this is called a wrapper function. It's non-recursive. This is the function it's wrapping. It is recursive. See how it calls itself? And the reason you use a wrapper function is if you wanted to add parameters, as we just did right here, that were not present but that we needed. Those are wrapper functions.